I uncovered the terrifying truth behind a cursed queen who seduced her stepsons. I never should have opened that door. It was a promise I made to myself, a whisper that echoed in my mind as I stood there, heart racing, just outside the cracked wooden frame. The chill of the night crept up my spine, the air thick with an unsettling stillness. I felt the weight of history pressing down on me, a heaviness I couldn't shake. Life had been simple before. Mornings filled with the scent of coffee and the warmth of sunshine spilling through the window. My routine was mundane, familiar. I would wake up, brew coffee, scroll through my phone. But everything changed that night. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows as I stumbled upon an old book at the library. Each page whispered secrets of the cursed queen, her hollow eyes, her spine-chilling laughter. I was drawn in, my fingers trembling as I traced her name, the stories of betrayal and seduction swirling around me like shadows. The cracks in the walls of my home seemed to pulse with energy. It felt as if the very air vibrated with the whispers of lost souls. I could almost hear their cries, a low murmur that danced at the edge of my consciousness, leading me deeper into the heart of the tale. Shadows flickered in the dim light, clinging to the corners like ghosts waiting to be freed. As I deciphered the queen's twisted fate, unease settled like a weight in my chest. Objects in my room began to shift, an old chair creaked. My book fluttered open to a page that detailed the queen's sins. I was breathing harder now, my palms clammy against the cool surface of the table. What was happening? Was it just my imagination, or had the queen reached out from the past, wrapping her claws around my reality? A sudden noise tore through the silence. I froze, every hair on my body standing on end. Was it footsteps? The creak of the floorboards echoed as if someone were approaching, inching closer. My heart raced, pounding wildly against my ribs. I needed to run, to escape whatever horror lay beyond the door, but I was frozen, paralyzed by a fear I could not comprehend. Then, a whisper, soft yet sharp like ice against my skin. "Help me," it pleaded, a tremor in its tone that sent chills down my spine. I couldn't breathe. My throat felt tight as I struggled against the urge to call out. The whispers grew louder, drowning everything else. "Help me," it wrapped around my mind, seeping into my thoughts. And then, just like that, silence. The air grew thick with tension, my heart a drum in my ears. I leaned towards the door, barely able to breathe, when I saw Ida figure in the darkness, cloaked in shadows. My stomach dropped, nails digging into my palms as I gripped the edge of the table. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. The door slammed shut. I was left standing there, the weight of fear crashing down. What had I unleashed? What was left in that darkness? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The room felt as if it was closing in, the air thickening with dread. I no longer owned my breath, each inhalation a laborious struggle against the tightly knotted fear twisting in my chest. My heart thundered painfully in my ears as I stood still, paralyzed in the suffocating darkness. If I had thought the whispers were terrifying, it was the silence that followed that now staggered me with fear. Suddenly, the shadows around me shifted, flickering against the walls as if a breath of wind had passed through, but I could sense there was no wind. The very air felt electric. A low, guttural sound rose from somewhere beyond the door, a dissonant murmur, a chorus of voices entwined in misery and betrayal. "Help!" Meth's voice returned, smoother now, more insistent, like the sound of silk sliding over skin. It was beckoning but simultaneously threatening. Without thinking, I took a trembling step back from the door, each step crackling with a sense of foreboding. But the need to consult the book, to understand the demon I had awoken, pulled me forward. Compelled by some primal force, I moved back to the table, my legs shaky. I grasped the ancient volume with trembling fingers, the pages well worn and brittle. My eyes flew across the text, searching for any log of how to release myself from the curse that now wrapped around my throat. Each word withered in my mind, distorted by dread and uncertainty, until I finally found a passage that spoke of the way the Queen could enchant the living with her sorrows, embedding her will into their minds. My blood ran cold. The ramifications of my curiosity nagged at me. I had unwittingly stepped into a blood-soaked legacy. Guided by instinctive terror, I glanced back towards the door. The wood cracked ominously, punctuated by a series of shivering knocks. It sounded less like a calling and more like a predator testing the resolve of its prey. "Open the door," the voice whispered, now dripping with malice and seductive allure, curling around my mind like a serpent. "It's only me." Let me in doubt. I wanted to scream for whatever was outside to leave me, to confront whatever had taken residence in the shadows. But the whispers metamorphosed into a tantalizing melody, brushing against my ears like a lover's caress. "Help me and you will be free." My grip tightened on the book, desperate for its pages to guide me. But before I could comprehend my next move, the floor gave a shudder beneath me, as if something unfurling beneath the surface of the wood. A dark, thick shadow erupted from beneath, snaking above and around my feet, coiling with a tension that dug into my skin like icy fingers. I gasped in horror as the shadow pulled me downward. My vision blurred, and for a moment I thought I saw a face within the embrace of darkness, a twisted visage resembling the Queen, her hollow eyes boring into my very essence. "Stay with me," the voice rumbled from all around, now seeming to emanate from the walls themselves, a supernatural chorus urging me to succumb to the darkness. Desperate, I slammed the book shut, attempting to drown out the enchantment suffocating my senses. It was a mistake. The shadows recoiled, screaming in fury, the voices blendings into an unholy cacophony that escalated into pure, unbridled rage. As the darkness swelled, something within my mind snapped. A surge of strength flickered back to life, desperate for escape. I lunged for the door, hoping against hope to escape this nightmare. Infuriated knocks echoed, a tangible pounding as if unhallowed hands clawed at the barrier separating me from the abyss beyond. Then, in one fleeting moment of clarity amidst the chaos, I felt the overwhelming dread crystallize. The story of the cursed Queen, the loss of her son, the betrayal, the eternal change she cast upon her lovers, had twisted back upon itself. And I was next. With a final deafening crash, the door burst open, revealing a scene that would haunt me for eternity. Dark figures writhed in the threshold, a swirling mass of tortured souls, faces distorted in eternal anguish, their eyes glimmering with the same hollowness I had seen in the pages before me. I staggered back, overwhelmed by a sudden wave of freezing air that pierced my skin as the figures advanced. Just as I thought I would drown in the tide of despair, I caught a glimpse of the Queen herself, an ethereal but grotesque beauty now floating amongst her minions, extending a beckoning hand, her voice filling the space like a chilling hymn. "Join me, dear heart, fulfill the promise of those before you." The shadows rushed forward, enveloping me, hunger and darkness intertwining, and I screamed, a cry swallowed by the vacuum of night. In the agonizing instant before the darkness consumed me, I realized the truth. Some doors should never be opened, and some queens remain eternally cursed, forever waiting for their newest victims. And maybe, just maybe, I was not the first to be trapped within these cursed walls. As my vision faded into the gaping maw of the void, a single thought pierced through the agony: someone else would open the door. The air thickened with despair as I drifted into the blackness of unconsciousness, only to be jolted awake in a cold sweat. I lay on a floor, slick with moisture, the darkness thickening like a suffocating shroud around me. The void had lapped me up, and yet, I was still ensnared within its grasp. My heart raced with the knowledge that this was no mere nightmare. I pushed myself upright, blinking against the shadows that danced around me like specters mocking my very existence. The faint glow of moonlight seeped through a fissured window, casting a pale light that illuminated the corners of an unfamiliar chamber. This was not the same room I had tried to escape. It was more expansive and even more oppressive, adorned with tattered tapestries and a large, ornate mirror flanking the far wall. The moment I turned to it, a chill slithered up my spine. There, reflected in the cracked surface, stood the queen, not a figment of my imagination, but hauntingly vivid, her hollow eyes fixed on mine with an insatiable hunger. I blinked, and in the shimmer of the glass, she seemed to blend in with the shadowy tendrils that crawled alongside her, twisting her image into something monstrous yet alluring. "Are you afraid?" Her voice was a whisper that pulsated through the chamber, unsettling the air before it returned to silence. "You shouldn't be." I shook my head violently, backing away from the mirror as dread coiled once more within me. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, yet I felt compelled to look again, as if the very act of denial would solidify my fate. The queen's lips curved into a smile, and the shadows coalesced into figures flanking her, each bearing the same agonized expressions I had glimpsed in my earlier vision. "Look closely," she commanded, her tone laced with a dark temptation that tugged at the corners of my mind, urging me to succumb. Reluctantly, I stepped back toward the mirror, my breath coming out in shaky bursts, dangerously close to raising through the flammable tension that electrified the air. Within the depths of the reflective surface, the scene began to shift, revealing not only her form but a past entwined with desolation, the very tale that had led to her eternal curse. I witnessed the grand banquet, the court of the queen bustling with life, laughter dancing through the air like a fleeting dream. But these moments were mercilessly intercut with glimpses of horror. I watched as betrayal blossomed among adoring courtiers, shadowy figures conspiring against her. I felt the surge of rage that pulsed through her once vibrant form, morphing into a vengeful thirst. "Do you understand now?" she whispered, her essence flickering as if the shadows threatened to consume her too. "They feared me. They betrayed me." The weight of that clarity draped heavily over my shoulders. "I will have my revenge, and you shall assist me." Before I could comprehend how to refuse, a surge of power exploded around me, twisting the shadows until they coalesced into tighter forms. It was a nightmare shape, each one resembled someone I knew, and now they stood before me, lost souls trapped eternally within her grasp. Their mouths opened in silent screams, their eyes wide with despair and recognition, their faces marred by loss and longing. "Join me," the queen implored, her voice a cascade of silk. "Help me free them or suffer as they did." I stumbled back, dread pooling in my stomach, but it was the mirror that drew me in like a moth to the flame. The memories, the sacrifices, the betrayals became a whirlwind, each face emerging from the void of shadow to latch onto my senses, their thoughts inching closer to my own. I felt memories that were not mine flood my mind, the chilling sensation of knowing their grief, their guilt, their hopelessness. And oh! I gasped, tearing my gaze from the swirling images. I stumbled and collapsed against the wall, breathless and panicked, but the queen and her chorus were relentless. The very room trembled with their rage, and one by one, the shadows pulled my name from the darkness into their maddening chant. "Join us, become one then, as..." If my thoughts had summoned the fragility of hope, a sudden flicker of light pierced the warped reflections. Another doorway appeared, a glinting silver portal forming at the edge of the chamber. I had no understanding of where it could lead, but the ache of desperation seized my heart. "Foolish mortal," the queen hissed, her voice dripping with venomous seduction, "that is not your escape. You cannot run from what binds you to me." I had only a heartbeat to act. In a frenzied rush, I surged towards the silver light, propelled by instinct, while the creatures around me wrenched and twisted, a chorus of fury attempting to keep me from my desperate hope. Just as I was about to cross the threshold, a dark hand shot from the shadows, gripping my ankle with icy precision. I fell hard, the brilliant light of salvation flickering just beyond my reach, while the haunted souls surged forward, their voices a maelstrom of anguished pleas and wicked promises. Just as despair began to claim me once again, I wrenched free and grasped for the light, desperately clawing my way through the pulsating waves of dread. But as I pulled away from the darkness, I heard one last husky breath hiss at my ear. "You will return. They always do." With a sickening lurch, I stumbled through the semblance of escape, but as I landed on the other side, I found myself back in the place where it all began, the room at the center of my nightmares, now shrouded in an echoing silence infused with dread. The air quivered. I knew, with every fiber of my being, that I had not broken the cycle. Instead, I had merely unlocked another door. And in that moment of breathless clarity, I glimpsed the figure in the shadows watching from the corner of the room, familiar yet terrifically wrong. I had unwittingly walked into the Queen's final trap, and now, I was far from alone. The shadows thickened around me, like a dark tide eager to fold me back into their depths. Heart pounding, I dared to turn my head, searching for the source of the suffocating dread coiling in the corner of the room. The flickering candlelight failed to penetrate the blackness that engulfed the figure emerging slowly from the gloom. It took shape an elongated silhouette, subtly contorted by the dim glow, yet utterly recognizable. I felt a chill source back through my veins, planting cold seeds of recognition. It was a Childa boy, no older than 10, his features sharp and pale, eyes wide and vacant as though they had seen horrors unspoken. His hair hung in stringy clumps, clinging to a forehead that glistened with beads of sweat, and a fragile layer of dirt coated his entire form. "Help me!" the word tumbled from his cracked lips in a whisper so soft it barely stirred the air in front of me. Yet, it reverberated deep within my soul, a mournful echo that twisted something inside me. I hesitated, weighing the caution that had kept me alive thus far against the pull of his innocence. "What happened to you?" I breathed, every instinct screaming that this child was another trick, another design of the Queen's wicked sorcery. But I had to know. The boy stepped closer, and I flinched, half expecting the darkness to consume him whole. Instead, he drew a ragged breath. "I was chosen just like you," he said, his voice a slight tremor that broke my heart all over again. "To be a part of her court." Images sparked to life within the depths of my memory, conversations long past, nights spent in shadowed rooms, the lingering whispers of something darker. "The banishment?" I murmured, piecing together fragments. "The Queen's retribution." The truth rumbled ominously in my chest, and I steadied myself against the wall. The weight of the boy's truth pressed against my heart like a VC, an entire dynasty lost, sacrificed to the Queen's insatiable wrath. "No one escapes her. The shadows take you." His words precipitated dread, tugging at the edges of my resolve. "You saw them in the mirror, the others. They think they can leave, but their screams are woven into her own thoughts. They are a part of her now, and so shall you be. Get away!" I shouted, recoiling from him, instinctively grasping for solace in the spectral gloom. But the boy stayed rooted, tears pooling at the edges of his wide, dark eyes shining like polished obsidian. "I was brought back here too. Trust her, and she revives the dead to seek vengeance," he murmured, and the shadows slinked closer as he spoke. "She will take you, darken your heart with betrayal. You will become one of many, mere whispers in her endless crusade." Before I could comprehend the full weight of his words, the flickering light of the candles began to die, leaving us submerged in suffocating darkness. The boy's expression morphed under the vanishing light, morphing from anxious desperation to a blank mask of fear. "You have to leave now," but the panic that swelled within me ignited a sudden rebellion. "Leave?" I screamed into the obsidian void. "Where? You are here, trapped. How could I possibly leave you?" From behind the boy, the shadows shifted like rippling water, curling into the unmistakable form of the Queen, her figure more formidable, grand, yet horrible. "What a touching display," she purred, her voice draping over me like silk infused with poison. "But you misunderstand her fate. He chose his path long ago." "No!" the boy cried, his eyes brimming with anguish. "I was innocent. I never wanted this." "Not for you to desire, dear child," the Queen hissed, her smile twisting mercilessly. "But I have a new purpose for you." Her gaze, cold and suffocating, shifted back to me. "And I have a place for you too." The boy turned, fear etching deeper lines into his skin. "Run!" he shrieked, but the shadows swallowed his voice, amplifying the weight of their grip around my throat. I took a shuddering step back, momentarily entranced by the Queen's malicious beauty, my mind twisted in loyalty to the darkness within her embrace. The boy reached for me, fingers trembling, and suddenly the walls of the room began to pulse ominously, vibrating with the distress of the lost souls pressing within, beating against the barriers that contained their agony. "Join us!" the voices of the forsaken soaked into my thoughts, rising in a haunting cadence, wrapping around my heart like vines climbing a decrepit wall. In that vortex of despair, Riven between the boy's final desperate plea and the Queen's malevolent invitation, I felt a finger of doubt slide through my marrow, chaining me down. The walls convulsed, and another figure slipped into view, this time a woman of fierce spirit with blazing red hair that rippled even in absence of a breeze. I am not a beast to be tamed, she warned me, glaring at the Queen. You cannot have her. What is happening? I gasped, as the shadows rolled in closer, converging with an earth-shaking force that sent shivers through my spine. But the boy's eyes, wide and petrified, locked onto mine, pleading for understanding. Your choice, he whispered, and behind him, the walls gripped tighter. Then, with a deafening crash, the shadows erupted, filling the air with thunderous wails as the figures from the mirror stepped forth into this world twisted and cruel, embracing me in their rapture. I felt them, their desperation clawing at my mind, unearthing my most hidden fears. And as the room began to swirl into chaos, I realized with terror that at that moment, I was no longer simply a witness. I was being pulled into the heart of the Queen's dark vengeance, entwined forever in her cursed court. Choose. The boy's voice cut through the cacophony as shadows loomed between us, threatening to bury us within their maelstrom. With my heart pounding like a drum, I faced the choice that lay before me, teetering on the brink of darkness. Surrounded by the tormented, I grasped the boy's hand just as the floor began to crack beneath our feet. And then, in the billowing dark, I saw her emerge, a figure cloaked in fury and hatred, planting herself between me and the escape I yearned for. You are mine, the Queen snarled, her eyes glinting fiercely, just as the darkness pulled me closer to an eternal fate. And with that I was drawn into her world, a realm where shadows transformed into wrathful phantoms, and there seemed to be nothing left but the darkness swirling around me. Terror slithered along my spine as I stood, fingers interlaced with the boy's trembling hand, entrapped in a realm where shadows were sentinels of despair. The very air crackled with a dark energy, and the floor shuddered beneath us, protesting against the weight of anguish that was compressing the space around us. Whispers rose from the cracks, dripping with dread, begging for silence as though the specters of the lost feared to summon further malignancy. The Queen's presence enveloped me, every inch of her radiating with dark power, pure malevolence that held the promise of dreadful things to come. The boy's grip became a lifeline, a delicate tether between my humanity and the dragging dark that threatened to consume us both. I could no longer differentiate between the chilling howls of the shadows and the muffled cries of those trapped within, a swirling cacophony of despair harmonizing into a terrible symphony. Run! The fierce woman with the fiery hair shouted again, standing defiantly against the encroaching shadows. Her expression was a canvas of rage and sorrow, eyes blazing as she faced the Queen. Do not let her bind you. I was torn, caught between the spiritual duel unfolding before me and the dread swirling around, pulling at my very essence. The boy dashed toward me, his face an agonized mask. She wants your heart alight within you, he screamed, his words punctuated by the staccato beat of my frantic pulse. Don't let her take it. Run! The Queen unleashed a cackling laugh, a sharp sound that twisted like a knife through the air. Oh, how poetic! She crooned, her voice dripping with malice. A child's hope against a mother's wrath. You think you can outsmart the darkness? You have already been chosen. There is nowhere to flee. The shadows surged, creeping closer, their caustic presence suffocating. They were alive, a seething mass of ancient rage, inching toward us like a predator ready to feast upon prey. I could almost visualize them breathing, pulsating with a hunger both primal and insatiable. Every heartbeat filled me with a deeper terror, echoing the boy's anguish as he looked between me and the Queen. Choose her, the boy implored, his voice breaking under the weight of despair. Choose the Queen and lose yourself forever. Or choose life, choose to break free. Each word resonated like a hammer striking iron, forging a decision I had yet to make amidst the chaos, one that felt akin to choosing between the depths of an abyss and surviving the harsh glare of a sun that revealed too much. Yet what did any of it mean when the shadows promised release and the Queen smiled, offering the comfort of surrender? The fiery-haired woman's silhouette danced ominously in the flickering candlelight, stark against the impending dark. I can show her, she urged, I can show you the truth of the doom she wishes to unleash, with a sudden intensity, the shadows propelled forward, coalescing into a grotesque form, nearly human, yet marred by an eternity of torment. I gasped as the antitium mirror of the boy emerged from the mass, eyes mourning and pleading for release, an echo of what lay dormant within my own heart. "Don't be deceived! Look beyond her veil!" It shrieked, an urgent entreaty laced with a despair that drew me closer, blurring the line between life and the eternal night. "Behold," the queen purred, her voice a lilting breeze amidst the rising tide of terror. "All that you fear, all I have ever desired, power, loyalty, the devotion of a heart willing to be sacrificed. Can you feel it? The essence of despair resonates in you. Join us, and embrace the endless stories of vengeance." The air thickened like syrup, and I could see tendrils of darkness snaking up towards the boy, threatening to pull him into oblivion. The room pulsated with a sickly energy as I felt shards of lost souls reaching out, seeking refuge in my very essence, clamoring for a chance to exist beyond this prison. Then, amidst the swirling chaos, I felt a presentient warmth weaving its way through the shadows, cutting through the dread like a knife through fog. It was the light of choice, glowing fiercely against the encroaching darkness. "Get away from him!" I cried, newfound fire igniting within me, pulling the boy and the spirits away from the grasp of her malevolence. But it was too late. The shadows recoiled, circling my feet, plunging into a frenzy as the queen roared with furious delight. "You chose to resist. You will regret your defiance, and they will pay the price." And just as the shadows roused for their attack, a blinding flash erupted from the epicenter of the chaos, a blinding brilliance that blasted like a wave, throwing all of us backward. I felt the cold touch of the boy's hand slip free, and watched in horror as he was engulfed in the swelling darkness, his terrified screams echoing off the walls like a whining siren. "No!" I lunged toward him, reaching through the dark, only to feel a forceful pull drag me back. Then, from the grotesque form spun by the shadows, a single scream, one that seemed to stem from the very depths of my soul, ripped through the air. In that instant, I realized the truth of her power. One soul must always be sacrificed to feed her hunger. "Choose now," the queen growled, her eyes reflecting a seductive hunger. "Choose to save him, or to claim your salvation." As the shadows writhed around me, both promises looming like spectres, one of eternal damnation and the other of an unforgiving price, I became painfully aware that this would be a decision haunting me forever. And just as I opened my mouth to scream, the shadows twisted, forming into many figures. Each one a whisper, each one a ghost echoing my thoughts, a chorus of dread. "What will you choose?" they hissed, their voices piercing, sounding out as the boy's final cry faded into the abyss. I was left with the impossible choice. The darkness closing in around me, each shadow a reminder of the user of shadows waiting to consume all I held dear. Desperation gripped my throat as I realized I was trapped in a cycle of horror, an inescapable loop of pain, forcing me to wonder if the darkness had truly become my only refuge. And just as I resolved to dart forward into the dark, a shadow coiled around my ankle, pulling me beneath the unforgiving earth. The cacophony of empty souls surrounded me, a hallowed shriek echoing in my ear as I felt the boundary between life and death blurred. As I succumbed to the tide, I heard the queen's laughter, echoing around me like a distant nightmare. "Welcome to my court," she whispered, and in that suffocating, brewing darkness, I realized I was no longer simply facing the depths of despair. I was being molded into a servant of shadow, a pawn in the queen's merciless game, forever lost to the horrors that awaited within. As I was dragged deeper into the abyss, the grotesque laughter of the queen twisted around me, sinking into my bones, a chilling caress that promised an eternity of servitude. My heart raced as I felt the grip of the shadows tighten, merging with my thoughts, whispering secrets that sent shivers coursing through my body. "Welcome, dear child. This is where your truth begins," the whispers slithered into my mind, wrapping around me like an insidious vine. I fought against the encroaching blackness, clawing at the ground, desperate to hold on to any shred of light. But it was futile. The further I sank, the more memories rose to the surface, faces I had loved, moments of joy turned to ashes. I saw the boy's face, his eyes wide with dread, his scream echoing in my ears, morphing into a haunting lullaby. "When you return, well be waiting, the shadows hissed in a hellish harmony that clawed at my sanity. Suddenly, a fragment of clarity struck me, bolting through the fog. The fiery-haired woman. She had fought so valiantly against the darkness, but where was she now? Had the shadows devoured her as well, or was she still battling against the Queen's influence? I focused my thoughts, willing myself to break free, to return to that moment where I had to decide between salvation and sacrifice. But the shadows pressed closer, their essence infiltrating my chest, forcing out any remaining luminescence, as if to fill the void with their despair. It was then I noticed the ground beneath me shifting, reshaping into a sight both terrifying and familiar. Twisted silhouettes flitted through the darkness, lost souls grasping for comfort, pleading to be freed. Each face bore a resemblance to the ones I had known, each wretched expression striking my heart with an awareness I desperately wished to ignore. No. My voice, now a distant echo, rang out through the chaos. I won't join you, but you belong with us now, a voice replied, smooth and sinister, laced with the sweetness of decay. The shadows consolidated into a figure, one that resembled yet distorted the boy, his essence twisted and rotting, layers of despair invisible to the untrained eye. Look around you. We are family here. Where love fades, despair flourishes, it crooned, reaching out with its ghostly hand. Embrace the truth. The weight of his words threatened to crush me. I recoiled, trying to distance myself from that twisted form, the intimate familiarity drenching me in cold perspiration. The boy was gone, lost to this wretched dimension, and his image now served as a seductive lure. But I had to resist. I had to fight against the tide. The figure wavered like a mirage, its features blurring as the shadows danced around me, engulfing my senses in a carnival of horrors. I stumbled backward, the floor beneath my feet shifting like a living thing, the cries of the forgotten rising in a crescendo of anguish. You cannot escape the Queen, the echoes called out, their voices rising and falling like a storm at sea. Her grasp is eternal, not if I refuse. I screamed, clenching my fists. With every ounce of strength, I summoned the warmth that still flickered within me like a dying ember, pushing back against the encroaching void. The shadows hissed, recoiling from the luminescence that shot from my core, forcing me to rise once more. But then, a horrible realization struck my heart, a relentless truth gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. The Queen's hunger for power wasn't the only malevolence festering here. Each shadow was a lost soul, betrayed by desire, a twisted reflection of their former selves entangled in the web of the Queen's darkness. What if I became like them? What if my refusal led to the boy's final demise, a sacrifice so final it would tether his essence to this realm forever? Join us, the boy's grotesque doppelganger pleaded, its whispers a caustic breeze. Become one with the shadows. Together, we can rise against her. No more pain. No more suffering. Fighting against the seductive promise, I shook my head violently. No! I will never choose darkness. But just as my defiance rang out, I felt the floor dissolve beneath my weight. The shadows narrowed in on me, a vicious tide ready to pull me under once more. 1,000 claws clawed at my mind, pulling me deeper into madness. As the cacophony of souls enveloped me, I cried out, "Help me! Someone, please!" And in a moment of unthinkable despair, as I braced for the abyss, I felt something cold but fierce curl around my wrist, a hand, solid and warm, yanking me backward from the brink. My eyes snapped open to behold the fiery-haired woman, her face etched in resolve. "We can't let you go." "Not yet!" she cried, desperately pulling me back. But as she did, we were both bombarded by a barrage of horrified screams from fading souls clawing for survival. And through the cacophony, a muddled chant erupted, weaving fear into the fabric of our reality, drowning my thoughts in a warning. The Queen is near. The offering must be made. Before I could grasp what this entailed, the shadows erupted around us, swirling like a deadly storm, 1,000 whispers rising together in a terrifying crescendo. "Will you be our next sacrifice?" In that instant, I felt the ground lurch again, the air thick with an impending finality, and the realization hit together with the weight of despair. The shadows did not judge those lost, they merely consumed. Each breath became a silent prayer, each heartbeat a countdown as I faced the endless cycle of torment. Then, out of the disorienting mass of anguish, the Queen herself materialized, and her laughter sang of a promise far darker than I had ever imagined. "Choose, my dear. You will be the next to fill my court," she beckoned, her voice swirling around me like smoke, tantalizing yet terrifying. And as I stumbled back against the woman's solid frame, shadows poured from the corner of my eye, a ferocious hunger racing to grasp me. "What will become of us?" I cried, just as the ground began to quake and surrender beneath us, cracks splitting wide to reveal a maw of darkness that throbbed with life. Moments stretched into an eternity, as I found myself teetering on the edge of that abyss, trapped between the approach of the Queen and the curse of the souls behind me. With desperation clawing at my throat, I could only wonder would I join them, or would I fight till the last? But before I could choose a doom, another voice surged through, sweet and soft like a lullaby, driving a new sense of terror through the air. "If you step off the edge, only one realm will be freed, the one that shall remain in darkness forever." And as I fell or leaped, I didn't know what awaited. I only knew that the shadows would claim another heart, and perhaps it would be my own. My descent felt infinite, each passing moment stretching into a twisted nightmare. Greedy shadows reached for me, whispering promises that turned my insides to ice. I flailed, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I plummeted into the unknown, the howls of lost souls blending into a chorus of despair. Panic gnawed at the edges of my sanity when suddenly, the gravitational pulls shifted. Caught in an unseen current, I was sucked sideways into a dark chamber, landing on a surface that crackled as I touched it. My heart raced in my chest, the air thickened around me, saturated with an overwhelming sense of malice. I stood up, brushing off the gritty black dust that clung to my skin like remnants of my shattered resolve. I was in a vast cavern, its walls undulating like the skin of a living creature. Bioluminescent fungi clung to the rock like the tendrils of a vengeful spirit, casting an ethereal blue light that illuminated the horrific tableau before me. Twisted forms writhed in anguish, their faces devoid of humanity yet reflective of memories twisting within. I stumbled backward, recognition slicing through my horror. They weren't just shadows, they were echoes of the past, the very people who had been consumed by the Queen's insatiable hunger. "Help us!" A voice erupted from within the writhing mass, one I recognized instantly. The boy. But his face was barely discernible, twisted in agony and shadow. "You have to stay. We need you. You can break the cycle." "No! You're trapped!" I shrieked, the sound breaking against the stone walls, ricocheting back with cruel laughter. "This isn't real. It's as real as you make it." His grotesque visage hardened in determination, and he reached out, fingers extended towards me, trembling against the distortion of the darkness. "You can save us. You have the light inside." Something deep within me stirred, battling against the encroaching waves of hopelessness. The shadows around us writhed and pulsed in rhythm to a muted chant, fierce and insistent. The offering must be made. The Queen must be sated. I looked back towards the void from which I had just come. The fiery-haired woman stood at the edge of that ever-present darkness, her face a mask of fierce resolve. "You have to believe, you must fight," she called, desperation lacing her voice. "Find the Queen's heart. It's the only way to break this." "Break what?" I cried out, stumbling towards her, my heart pounding as the whispers grew frantic. "The cycle," she begged, her words trembling. "The curse. If we do not sever her hold on this world, we'll all be trapped in this limbo for eternity, caught in an endless dance of despair." Before the weight of her words could settle, a shrill, mocking laughter erupted through the cavern. The Queen emerged from the shadows, her silhouette exquisite yet horrifying, a deadly beauty wrapped in darkness as she sauntered towards me. Her eyes glimmered like polished obsidian, reflecting fragments of a life long lost, seducing yet repelling. "So naive, dear child," she crooned, the sickly sweetness of her voice wrapping around me like a silken noose. "They think you can escape. But you are already mine." With a swish of her hand, the shadows surged forward, coiling around my feet, binding me in place like a serpent's embrace. I could feel the weight of their despair crushing the light within me, snuffing it out with agonizing precision. Join me, she continued, approaching, a twisted smile playing upon her lips. Embrace your true self. No! I want! I shouted, desperation welling inside me. But my voice trembled, the resolve faltering as the shadows rippled around me, tearing at my mind, coaxing out my fears like an insidious serpent. The boy's face twisted in pain. Don't listen to her. We need to find her heart, take it from her. If she is defeated, the curse ends, the queen's laugh echoed, rich and throaty, reverberating through the chamber. My heart? She giggled, circling around me like a predator. Foolish child. Do you not realize? My heart is here, within every shadow, every whisper. I am eternal. I am the darkness you fear, and you will never break. Free, my pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out rational thought as desperation clawed at my throat. I will find it. I screamed defiantly, the fire igniting once more within me. Gritting my teeth against the tightening grip of the shadows, I saw the glimmer of hope reflected in the eyes of the fiery-haired woman. Then run! Find the heart! She shouted, her own form flickering like a candle caught in the wind. But as I turned to flee, the shadows erupted violently, grasping at my legs, pulling me down like quicksand. The boy's tormented cries faded into the background, replaced by the queen's mocking chorus. You can't escape! You belong to me. Your essence will feed my reign. Just as the darkness threatened to consume my final ounce of will, I felt a strange pull, a force that beckoned me beyond the shadows. A voice whispered through the cacophony, a promise both horrifying and sweet. Find the truth, and you will find your salvation or your doom. And before I could react, the ground beneath me cracked wide open, revealing a pulsating chamber marked by the faint outlines of broken souls, a heart pulsing in the center, tethered to the very fabric of despair. It beckoned me, the promise of freedom and the overwhelming urge to succumb roiling within me, just as the shadows hissed, hungry for my surrender. I stood at the precipice of ruin and hope, inches away from the heart, the echoes of the past screaming in my ears. Will you dare to plunge into the depths of the truth? The queen's voice slid through the chaos, a taunt that sent shivers racing down my spine. And with that final question hanging in the air, I stepped forward into the abyss once more. I was engulfed by sharp, vibrant tendrils of darkness, merging with the pulsing heart that lay at the center of the abyss. It throbbed, a twisted amalgamation of sorrow and anguish, beckoning me closer with every beat. Something inside whispered that this was the core of the queen's power, the spilled blood of lost souls cascading around it, shimmering like broken glass in the eerie darkness. As I hovered at its edge, the shadows wrapped around my waist, now like a lover's embrace rather than a suffocating bind. With each pulse of the heart, fleeting visions flickered past, ghostly images of countless souls that had been stripped bare by the queen's insatiable hunger. Their faces morphed between terror and hope, pleading for release, drowning in despair yet somehow glowing with the flicker of lost ambition. Do you see it? The boy's voice persisted in the darkness, stronger now, resonating through the wreckage of shattered dreams. That is her heart. But it's more than a mere organ. It is the vessel for her malice, and to destroy it is to sever her grip on this world. I peered deeper into the pulsing heart, drawing closer to its chaotic rhythm. In the shadows, I could make out the tortured faces pressing against the surreal barrier, a multitude of souls, their forms shifting, melding into one another, eyes pleading with bewildering desperation. They reached out towards me, mouths moving in soundless screams, an unending doomsday pledge, luring me to partake in their suffering. No! I yelled, pulling back as daggers of dread shot through my bones. My resolve began to wither, cold sweat collecting at the nape of my neck. I need to find a way to break this. The queen's laughter echoed throughout the cavern, a chilling reminder of her omnipresence. Pathetic little child! She sneered, materializing beside me with an elegance that belied her malice. You truly believe you can slice my heart? You'd only rip away your own sanity in the process. Each of her words slashed through me like a merciless wind, threatening to expose my deepest fears. I was but a flickering candle before her unrelenting storm, a forsaken moth drawn to the flames. Yet, amidst the encroaching darkness, a spark ignited within me. Something primal surged, a will to survive, to liberate those lost in the shadows. If I have the light, I whispered, unsure if the assertion even belonged to me, I can conquer this. Light? The Queen shrieked, her voice evaporating into a seething hiss. You think you possess a power that can rival mine? What do you know of light's frailty when faced with darkness? The air thickened, almost suffocating. I could feel the shadows clawing at my skin, and I found myself teetering on the edge of submission. My heart raced as I felt the soft pull of the heart's influence, each pulsation resonating in concert with my own fears. The apparitions of the tortured souls began circling me, their lamentation rising in an eerily harmonious chorus. Suddenly, the boy's haunting visage appeared before me, filled with frantic urgency. Trust it, he pleaded. Your light isn't the one they fear, it's your will. Use it to break the heart. Gathering every shard of courage I possessed, I lunged forward, reaching for the pulsating organ. As my fingers brushed its surface, the cavern grew silent, an eerie stillness cloaking the chaos. I could feel searing heat radiating from it, every pulse enveloping me in a torrent of raw emotions, unimaginable grief, guilt, torment, and a glimmer of hope. In that heartbeat, I understood the Queen's twisted power. The heart was a gateway not merely to despair, but also to the light of those trapped within. Every shadow contained a flicker of hope, a fragment waiting to be resurrected. I could use the echoes of their sufferings as a conduit to harness the very essence that could extinguish the Queen's reign of terror. But as I made contact, a violent tremor shook the foundation of the cavern. The shadows writhed and roared, angry serpents seeking to reclaim their grasp on sanity, pulling me deeper into the cycle of despair. My vision blurred, the weight of their collective anguish threatening to drown me. No! I won't give in! I screamed through gritted teeth, wrenching my hand back just as the heart seized my very soul in its grip. The shadows screeched, a monstrous cacophony that seemed to meld into one horrific wail. In that moment of defiance, I felt the warmth of light surge through me, a flicker that heralded my determination. I grasped the essence of those specters and poured it into the heart, screaming against the tide, "You will not take me! You will not take them either!" But just as I felt the surge take root, the Queen's figure coiled around me, her face mere inches from mine like a serpent preparing to strike. You think it can end like this? She hissed, and in an instant she plunged her icy fingers into the heart beside me. A detonation of chaos erupted, shadows spewing forth from her touch, swallowing everything in darkness. As blinding pain coursed through my veins, I realized I was not just fighting for my survival. I was resisting the power of eternal night itself. Then, like a curtain falling, darkness encased the world around me, consuming all sense of self. Just as I sank deeper into oblivion, a flicker of recognition shot through the void, echoing a familiar claim: the offering must be made. And there, in that suffocating darkness, I felt time twist, a vibrant pulse within me calling to the depths of forgotten memories. In that chaos, I became both seeker and hunted, teetering on the brink of a truth that whispered of blood and betrayal, of a cursed heart longing for liberation, or the eternal damnation that awaited me if I failed. Then something broke through the black, the fleeting essence of another presence, a flicker of hope amidst despair. A whisper that chilled my bones and ignited my fear. I have waited far too long, dear child, and with that chilling promise hanging in the air, the darkness drowned the last of my thoughts, pulling me down into a chasm of uncertainty. The darkness coiled around me, shaping itself into a thick, oppressive fog that choked out all sense of time and space. I felt weightless, suspended between despair and a flicker of courage, clinging to the threads of hope that had begun to unravel within me. The whisper slithered closer, its cold fingers brushing across the back of my neck like a serpent poised to strike. I have waited far too long, dear child. The voice curled in my mind, lingering like a dark promise. It was a familiar tone, one that carried the distant echoes of familial love twisted into something far more sinister. Panic clawed at my chest, and I grasped the edges of my fragmented memories, fragments of warmth, of laughter that turned sour and turned to ash. Through the suffocating darkness, the pulse of the heart reverberated, drawing back my attention. It throbbed like a wounded animal, its rhythm matching the frantic beats of my own heart, each pulse a reminder of the souls ensnared not just by the Queen, but perhaps by someone far closer to me. No! I won't give in! Your time ends here! I howled, though I felt the weight of my voice lost to the swirling abyss. The shadows echoed my screams, morphing into ghostly visages, their hollow eyes shimmering with a shared sorrow. They seemed to reach for me, desperate for salvation from the cruel grasp of their eternal tormentor, and yet within their eyes, I glimpsed something even more terrifying, a flicker of recognition. They weren't merely lost souls, some bore features that mirrored my own, twisted reflections of what could have been. You see them, don't you? The voice cooed, now laced with mockery. Do they stir memories? They were your family, dear child. With that, screams surged within me, a collective entity born of grief and anger. I was drowning in the realization that the atrocities occurred under the watch of one I had once loved, someone I had thought safe but who had betrayed me to the darkness. I closed my eyes tight, shaking my head in denial. No! Not them! They were innocent, but innocence is a fleeting thing, dear. They chose their fates long before you came to understand the truth. Your beloved Queen, she led them, and she awaits your surrender. As I fought through the turmoil, a flicker of memory ignited, the Queen, radiant and terrible, weaving tales of grandeur and sacrifice. It was she who had drawn me into her web, making me believe I would find acceptance and power in her realm. The depths of that deception swirled like a storm within me, threatening to tear me apart. Join me, she had said, her voice fluid and unyielding. You will be embraced by shadows, where the light is nothing but a cruel illusion. I gasped, the clarity slashing through my fog of despair. You were never meant to be a monster. You could have saved them. I shouted into the darkness, desperation lacing my words. Save them? The voice chuckled, now echoing with the softness of honey sweetened with poison. They were ripe for the picking. And you, my sweet child, are to be my greatest offering. The shadows thickened, swirling violently around me like a tempest. I felt them clawing at my skin, tearing apart my sanity with each clawing grasp. But as the panic rose, another pulse came forth from deep within me, a resolute light that ignited in defiance. No! I cried out, thinking of the faces that crested against the threshold of my memory, the love they had for me, the trust they had so easily bestowed. I am not yours to claim. You will not take them or me. The heart responded with an overwhelming surge, glowing a furious crimson, casting violent shadows that swirled against the cavern walls. It throbbed in rhythm with my will, and in that moment of defiance, I drew strength from their flickering essence, channeling it into a focused beam of light that burst forth from my palms. With a scream that echoed through the cavernous sound not entirely my own, I released the light into the heart. The shadows recoiled, hissing as they splintered, cleaving to the walls of the cavern. A shockwave rippled through the fabric of the darkness, dislodging the tendrils that sought to ensnare me. But the Queen was not finished. You think you can stop me? Her voice wrapped around me like chains. You, who were so easily bewitched? Your struggle is nothing but a prelude to my triumph. As the light pushed back the darkness, I saw her eyes flicker with rage and something else, a longing that I both recognized and despised. With one last surge of energy, I felt the heart connect with me, a bond born from sorrow and hope, forming a bridge between the shadows and flickering specters. In that crucial moment, a heartbeat in the cacophony, I realized what my offering needed to be. But just as clarity reached its zenith, the earth beneath me shook violently, fracturing under the relentless power of her rage. Then let us see if you can survive the true cost of the heart's offering. She howled, and with a catastrophic roar, she turned her wrath upon the heart, striking it with the ferocity of a storm. In an instant, the pulse warped into a cacophony of agony, and the cavern resonated with a cataclysmic roar. Shadows clashed, the spirits screeching as the dark tide surged back, threatening to engulf everything once more. I stumbled against the force, light flickering with uncertainty, feeling the bond waning as the Queen unleashed chaos. The world around me fractured into splintering echoes, and I gasped as the darkness carried with it an unbearable weight. The soul's cries became an unholy symphony, clawing at the remnants of my resolve. Just beyond the veil, a mist enveloped me, blurring the line between light and shadow. Within that haze I felt a prescience darkness that now bore familiar warmth, creeping forth to claim what was once lost. Join us, dear child. You belong to the shadows now. As that insidious echo enveloped my senses, I gasped one last time, a single thought piercing through the tumult, a chilling realization of my destiny unraveling before my eyes. And in the depths of the void, as I was torn away from the light, I felt the heart begin its last spasm, slowly engulfing everything in an eerie silence. The Queen's laughter faded, leaving only a haunting whisper floating through the unending dark. Our dance shall never cease. My final scream met the darkness, forever lost in the chasm of despair. I can still hear her laughter echoing in my mind. It is the last remnant of the cursed Queen whispering promises of power and torment, threading through the shadows like a sinister mist. I thought I had escaped, clawed my way out of her realm of despair, but now I know the dark truth. I am merely the latest vessel in her unholy court. The air is heavy with a suffocating stillness, a malevolence lingering that pulls at my heart, urging me to submit. I sit in the same room where it all began, the flickering remnants of candlelight casting alarming shadows that flicker and twist. I am no longer just a bystander. I am woven into the fabric of the curse, my very soul entwined with the echoes of those lost. The boy's face haunts May's pleading eyes filled with anguish, and I realize with dreadful certainty that I can hear their whispers, thrumming against my consciousness like a relentless drum. Help us, their voices mingle in a chilling chorus, threads of despair pulled taut by the weight of unending longing. When the Queen struck her heart, it unleashed a tempest raw, unfiltered anguish that surged through me, like a wall of ice crashing over my very essence. But it was not the heart that awoke me. It was a flicker of something else, a remnant of light that sparkled within, unexpectedly resilient. Perhaps that was why I was back here, or maybe I never truly left. I glance into the mirror, a cracked reflection of what once was. For a fleeting moment I see her, the Queen, regal and terrible, rising in my own visage. A wicked smirk threads across her lips, as if amused by my defiance. You thought you were free? Her voice unfurls like smoke in the air, intimate yet chilling, echoing in the recesses of my mind. Then it hits me like a physical blow. The heart still beats within me. It is here, ensconced in my chest, a dark pulse synchronized to the very rhythm of my own heartbeat. I feel its pull, dark and intoxicating, calling me to embrace her legacy. Join us, I hear the others plead once more, and I stagger, breath hitching in my throat. The flickering shadows coalesce, forming the faces of the lost souls I witness, a sea of despair rising, their eyes alight with a twisted hope, distorted yet painfully familiar. You are one of us now. Their whispers slither around me, caressing my ears with the promise of something more, a bond forged in suffering, an offering for eternal life in her grasp. But within that darkness, buried beneath layers of torment, I also sense the ghostly flicker of hope. It is the memories of laughter, of moments untainted by shadows. I am torn between the seductive call of the darkness and the fading echo of the light. And then, it all comes crashing together, the realization that the Queen's power is derived not only from despair but also from the flickering essence of those consumed. If I were to accept this fate, I would become just another whisper, a shadow waiting for the next soul to become entwined within the cursed dance. But the darkness knows captivating power. I feel its tendrils snaking around my mind, threatening to silence the hope that still flickers inside. Accept what you are, the Queen murmurs, her voice echoing, chillingly intimate. You belong to me now, to the shadows. Fulfill the promise. And as the shadows close in, an army of despair sweeping over me, I am faced with a choice. I can surrender, become one with the curse eternally, embracing the whispers that promise salvation through the binding chains of the Queen's malice, or I can fight. With every ounce of strength, I concentrate on the light, that flicker of hope growing like a wildfire through my chest. They can call to me, the souls of the forgotten, claiming I am theirs. But I will not be a vessel for their despair. I was never meant to be chained by darkness. The laughter that surrounds me transforms into a scream as I channel everything into that pulse within me. I pivot towards the mirror, meeting the Queen's gaze not in fear but in defiance. I reject your darkness. I reject this curse. I scream, the light surging forth from me in a blinding wave. Shadows recoil, hissing as I unleash the essence of my heart, the fiery flicker of hope that pushed back against the tide of despair blindingly bright. You are nothing without the choices of those you've claimed. Each word is a dagger driven by desperation, aimed at the heart of the Queen and her darkness. But even as I fight, I know the truth. I am still entwined in her web, still tied to the heart pulse and power coursing through me, and it feels like falling, like surrendering all over again. I scream, my voice piercing through the chaos, filled with determination but laced with terror. I won't be beaten down again. I see you for what you are. That's the moment everything changes. The sibilant whispers of the lost souls begin to wane, swirling into the ether as the shadows break apart. The love I once felt for those lost, those who spoke to me, rises up like a tide, sweeping through the underscored torment of despair, threatening to drown me once more or transform me. Join us, the darkness calls, pleading, beckoning like a lover's embrace. Meanwhile, the echoes remind me of the boy, his piercing gaze helplessly reinforcing my resolve. And deep in the core of my being, something unfolds, a nexus of strength born from the realization that at my heart lies the choice. To accept the curse or to shatter it once and for all. I feel the memories of the battleground within me, and in that storm of choice, I grasp the heart's raw energy, the power to vanquish the fear that feeds upon my psyche. With everything I have, I pull the weave of shadows around me, bridging my light against the hollow laughter of the Queen. But as the darkness screams, and the faces of the lost morph into something more menacing, taunts of ancient betrayal, I realize I will never be free of their echoes. I know the truth that echoes back in the shadows. The Queen never truly needed another victim. She merely desired a successor, a bearer of her darkness to carry forth into eternity. As I gaze into the eyes of the Queen, as the screams grow louder, rising to a cacophony, I understand the curse is not merely hers. It has woven itself within me, pulling against the very fibers of my being like a thread nestled deep within a tapestry. Darkness swirls around me, the laughter of the Queen rising to a fever pitch as her final promise resonates through me. You can never escape what has already chosen you. And as the darkness consumes me, I realize the harrowing truth. I have not broken the curse, nor have I escaped the Queen's clutch. I have merely become the next chapter in a dark legacy, a chilling reminder that not everything can be cast out. Sometimes the darkness must be embraced to survive. The last horror is that I feel it now. I feel the pulse. Feel the shadows bleeding into my skin, feel the merge of my light with her dark embrace forever. Fleetingly, I hear the boy's voice once more, but it fades as the shadows wrap around me, pulling me down, a chilling proclamation that forever echoes in my mind as the darkness swallows me whole. You will return.